I'm David Reilly, and a very warm welcome to another edition of People in Politics. If you know what it done, so please consider subscribing to the show. I'd be very grateful indeed. Today I'm joined by Conservative peer and former leader of the Conservative Party, Lord Howard. I'm really looking forward to hearing his take on the recent election results and the fortunes of the Conservative Party. So, welcome to People in Politics. Lord Howard, thank you very much for taking the time to do this morning. It's a real pleasure to meet you, and thank you.
My pleasure.
I thought we'd start with the most recent election results because last Thursday's election, some of the results were just astonishing, and I wondered, because you've been around politics a while, you don't need, you don't need me to remind you that. I wonder if you can think of a time where politics has seen as fractured and diverse as it is right now. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to remind you that if you enjoy my show, if you appreciate what I do, you can support my work by buying me a cup of coffee. It'll cost you £4, and you can find the link in the description to this video or the link in my biography in the channel. I'd be really grateful for your support. Enjoy the show.
No, I can't, is a short answer. I can't remember, I don't think there has been a situation in which you have five parties who have large numbers of councillors across the country. I don't think we've ever seen that before. We have seen insurgent parties before, which may be relevant to the fate of reform, and possibly the Greens as well, because I was elected to the House of Commons in 1983, and the period leading up to 1983 was the high watermark of the SDP Liberal Alliance. And at one point in those years, they were polling over 50% of the polls in the opinion polls. And everybody thought that they were going to absolutely, the phrase that was on everybody's lips was break the mold. Everybody thought they would break the mold of the Conservative Labour hegemony. And that didn't happen. So there have been attempts at insurgency before which have failed, but I don't think we've ever had five parties vying for people's votes in the way in which we have today. Some time ago, I thought reform would come and, they might last a few years, and I see be a resurgent party for a while. But after last week, the polls and the commentators are saying that, there's every chance that they might go on to, or indeed they could go on to government in 3 years' time. And do you think that's a distinct possibility? It's a possibility. I don't think it's a probability. I think anything could happen in the next general election. We simply don't know. And anybody who suggests that they know is deluding themselves. I think, for example, this may seem surprising to say at the moment, but I think it's perfectly possible that we could have a Conservative government after the next election. I think the Conservative Party has been making progress under Kemi Badenoch, and Reform's standing in the opinion polls has been diminishing. It's been slipping a bit. I also think that when it comes to a general election, unlike the elections we had last week, people think much more about about who they want to be prime minister.
Yeah.
And if you look at the standing in the opinion polls of the leaders of the parties, Kemi Badenoch comes top. You can't really say she's the most popular, but you can say she's the least unpopular. And she's the least unpopular by quite a margin. So I genuinely believe there is everything to play for. The outcome of the next election at this stage is very uncertain. It's probably 2.5 years away, and anything could happen.
How how do you think we've got to the situation today where where people are saying that it is no longer at the moment two-party politics and there's these five parties just like corporatism. What do you think is that led us to be here in this situation?
I think we've been in a very, very difficult situation. Um,
Mm,
last government, the Conservative government, had to deal with the aftermath of the financial crisis, and then it had to deal with COVID, and then it had to deal with the consequences of the Russia-Ukraine war. And all those things were very difficult for our country and made it very difficult and perhaps even impossible for a government to deliver the rise in living standards which people people hope and expect to get from a government. So, and we had, I must also admit, we made mistakes and we had um, one or two unsatisfactory prime ministers. So the people lost faith in the Conservative Party and transferred their loyalty in very large, in not in very large numbers, if you look at the share of the poll, but in a way which, because of our first past the post system, led to a Labour government with a very large majority. And that Labour government has made mistake after mistake. And it is not delivering economic growth and higher living standards. That's what people expect from their politicians. It's something that's very difficult to achieve in current circumstances. And most politicians have been slow in saying that it's difficult to achieve. They've tended to make lots of promises and they haven't been able to keep those promises. And so people have become entirely disillusioned with both parties which have been in government. Had any other party, Reform or the Greens or the Liberal Democrats, been in government at those times, I think there would have been disillusionment with them too.
do you think over the last few years there's been a bit of a movement to the left because we saw last year uh, uh, the, the, there's a growth in the Greens and indeed they won their first by-election ever I- and I think it is not so long ago when Jeremy Corbyn was leader for all his failings. And, there was still a big movement towards the left, and the Labour Party grew substantially at that time. So do you think there has been a move, particularly of the younger generation, to the left over recent times?
I'm not sure about that. I don't think that really. It may perhaps, but I don't necessarily think so. The Green victory in that parliamentary by-election, I think, was mostly influenced by people voting to keep out the Reform candidate. And they thought that in that particular election, in those particular circumstances, the best person to keep out Reform was the Green candidate.
Right.
What we have seen, um, which is, I think, quite an interesting development, is that the the people who were keen on Jeremy Corbyn, who are on the left, quite way out on the left,
Yeah.
um, have moved to the Greens. So that if you look at the Democrats in America, there are people in the Democratic Party who have quite similar views to the Greens and to Jeremy Corbyn. The new mayor of New York is one example, but they are still within the Democratic Party.
Mm.
In this country, they were within the Labour Party, but now more recently, one partly because I suppose because Jeremy Corbyn has been kicked out of the Labour Party. Those people are no longer in the Labour Party, and that accounts for the rise of the Greens. So I don't think it's necessarily a move to the left. It's the fact that a group of the population, a section of the population, which is pretty left-wing, which previously supported the Labour Party, and people in the Labour Party who were very left-wing, like Jeremy Corbyn, have now moved to a different party altogether, namely the Greens.
Uh, yeah, that's really interesting because because so there's a one that the younger generation are going to be more left leaning because they're a lot more environmentally conscious. I think they're more socially conscious. If you think about the neoliberalism of the 80s, the proliferation of capitalism and all of that. I think the younger generation, and I don't know if you agree, are are pushing back on that at the moment. So I think that's all why they're leaning to the left. It's just a thought.
Well, you may be right. I'm not sure. I think young people have often been left-wing, and they tend to move to the right as they get older. That's been a phenomenon for a very long time.
Yeah. Do you think the Conservative Party can be in? Do you think she needs to move to the left or the right? You know, there's this idea about out reforming reform, or has reform split the right irreversibly?
I think she should do what's right for the country. And sometimes that might seem to be a move to the right, and it might seem to be a move to the left. But the only criterion that you should have as a leader of any political party is to do what you believe is in the best interest of the country as a whole. Now, obviously, there will be different views as to what is in the best interests of the country as a whole. That's why we have different political parties. But that should be your guiding criterion, not moving, not doing this to disadvantage some other political party, but to do what you think is right for the country. And on the whole, I think that's exactly what Kemi Badenoch is doing.
You're one of very few people who've been in Kemi's been in her shoes. You've had her, she's, you've been right where she is. So, so what would you say to her right now? And I've heard people say that the leader of the opposition is the most difficult job in politics. You know, and do you think that's accurate?
Well, I think the advice I'd give to Kemi is keep going. I think she's doing pretty well, and that she should carry on doing what she's doing. Um, it is a difficult job. It's a very difficult job. To be honest, I'm not sure that I found it quite as difficult as I did being Home Secretary. That was
Really?
that was an extremely difficult job. But there's no doubt that being leader of the opposition is a difficult job, but I think she's doing very well.
When you were Home Secretary, what were some of the things that used to keep you awake at night?
Well, literally, what used to keep me awake at night were escapes from the prison.
Yeah.
because I would be, whenever there was an escape from a prison, I would be woken up in the middle of the night. So if I was woken up in the morning by my alarm clock and not by a call from the Home Office, I thought, oh great, I've been able to get a good night's sleep. So that was literally what used to keep me awake. Um, but there were many, many challenges when I went to the Home Office, and I think we made a good deal of progress, but it was a very challenging job.
Yeah. Yeah, you've held many very senior jobs in British politics, and and can you think of a time that or a job that you've found most difficult or most fulfilling, and that you've enjoyed the most?
Well, in a way, my time at the Home Office was both. It was certainly the most challenging and the most difficult, but it was also the most fulfilling. When I went there, they told me I couldn't do anything about the rise in crime, which had been going on for 50 years. And with the help of the police and others, and we made many changes, and crime started to fall, and pretty much been falling ever since. And the changes that I put in place are all still there. People, whether they've been Conservative Home Secretaries or Labour Home Secretaries, haven't really tried to do away with any of them. So it was both the most challenging and the most fulfilling of all the jobs that I've done.
When you got a phone call in the night to tell you that a prisoner had escaped, what did they expect you to do about it? Tuesday in the morning from wherever you were in London.
Well, there wasn't much I could do in the middle of the night.
Or I'm very sorry that this.
Now you froze there for a moment or two.
Yes, so did you, but I think we're back now.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I was saying was there wasn't much I could do in the middle of the night. Um, uh, but when I got to the we're back. I'm very
Eh,
sorry about this. I don't know whether it's your end or my end, but I'm very sorry.
no, I think no problem. That just happens. No, but I'll edit all the I'll edit all the freezes out. That's the beauty
Good,
of what
good.
so I'm be fine. So I wanted to take you back because I read that you joined the Conservative Party at the tender age of 15. So and that's quite young. So you must have.
That's really not true. I know that it's in Wikipedia and everybody thinks it's true, but it's not really true. I was interested in politics from an early age, but I didn't really do very much about it until I got to Cambridge, and
Right.
then I did become active in the University Conservative Association.
The- Did did your childhood shape your political views at all?
That's always a very difficult thing to know. My parents weren't at all interested in politics. I think they voted Liberal. I don't think they ever voted Conservative, but they certainly weren't socialist. They ran a small business, and I was very aware of the challenges of running a small business and um, the difficulties that rules and regulations and tax could cause. So that probably did influence me to some extent. And also my great political hero was Winston Churchill. And that probably played a part in it. And although Winston Churchill's relationship with the Conservative Party was mixed in some respects, he was the leader of the Conservative Party um, in my as I was getting interested in politics in my early teens when I was growing up. So that probably played a part as well.
Uh, 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 you trained as a lawyer, you were called to the bar. Well, when did you make the decision not to pursue your legal career and to go into politics instead?
I always wanted to go into politics, to tell you the truth. It just took me rather a long time to be selected for a seat.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I had to earn a living, and so I plied my trade as a barrister, and I enjoyed it. It was very fulfilling. Um, I, um, I, I enjoyed my time as a barrister, and occasionally I have sort of pangs of regret that I left it and that I'm not doing it now. But I always really wanted to go into politics if the chance, if the opportunity occurred.
Uh, I wanted to ask you about your time as employment minister because I think you were employment minister for 4 or 5 years, and I wonder if you could tell me about some of the issues at that time. Was unemployment very high at that time, and was welfare as big a political football as it is right now, and as big a thing.
Right. Well, I was Secretary of State for Employment for 2 years.
Do you?
Um, unemployment, unemployment was low at the beginning and starting to rise because the economic circumstances were getting more difficult. Welfare wasn't such a big issue then because it was a much smaller proportion of our national income. It wasn't the number of young people out of work wasn't anything like it is today, and um, people people weren't not working because of mental health problems to anything like the extent that is the case today. So welfare wasn't such a big problem. Um, the, I'm quite proud of the fact that it was in my time as Secretary of State for Employment that we finally put an end to the closed shop. People don't remember the closed shop, but the closed
What
shop
was that?
meant that if you weren't a member of a trade union in many areas of economic activity, many jobs, you couldn't get a job. You had to be a member of the trade union. I always thought that was wrong. So I'm proud of the fact that we finally put an end to the closed shop. And then I had great battles with my European colleagues about the Working Time Directive, which was also a big issue at that time. This is all a very long time ago. It's 30 years ago now. People have forgotten all about those issues today.
Yeah, that's it. But you supportive of Europe at the time, you know, do you think we should have closer ties with Europe?
Well, it depends what you mean by closer ties with Europe. I strongly believe that we should have good relations with our European
Yeah.
neighbours. And we should certainly cooperate with them on defense, because defense is, I think, the existential question of our age. We face an aggressive Russia. We can no longer depend on America, and we need to cooperate as closely as we can with our European colleagues, preferably within the framework of NATO, on defense. On other matters, I'm quite pragmatic. I think you have to look at each issue and see whether closer cooperation with Europe, which normally has a price attached, is in the interests of this country. In some areas, it may well be in our interests, and in other areas, it won't be. So I'm entirely pragmatic about it, but I don't want to give up any of our sovereignty. I don't want to go back into the single market or the customs union or any of those things. Um, I think we are still, I think, the sixth biggest economy in the world, sometimes the fifth, sometimes the sixth, and we're big enough to rule ourselves without being subject to the diktat of Brussels. So I'm in favor of good relations with our European neighbours, closer cooperation in some respects if it benefits our country, and not in others if it doesn't.
Well, I think everything. I was just going to say thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me this morning, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. I've enjoyed talking to you too. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.